The Floor Academy podcast is sponsored by Trelama, the trade labor marketplace, where businesses can find skilled trade labor, such as flooring installers, and where flooring installers and other skilled tradespeople can find permanent or project work. You can set up your profile at trelama.com, TRALAMA.com, or download the app from the Apple App Store or Google Play. And remember, Trelama is always free for skilled tradespeople. Welcome to the Floor Academy podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Hadeen, owner of Illustrious Hardwoods in Phoenix, Arizona. We are here to talk with flooring professionals from all over the country about the issues that matter to you. I want to encourage you to learn while you earn. Don't forget to check out our website, flooracademypod.com, or to become a patron over at patreon.com. Even $5 a month goes a long way to help this content to continue to be published. This week's guest is Zach Storer. Zach has been involved in the film and television industry for over a decade. Starting out as a production assistant, driving a van, and taking lunch orders, he worked his way up the ranks to become a camera operator and director of photography. The fast-paced world, non-consistent work schedule, constant traveling, and many times a toxic environment took its toll on Zach over the years. Be a fly on the wall as he opens up about how the world broke him down and what he has been able to do to find peace again. Zach Storer, are you on the line?
I'm here.
Awesome. Welcome to the Floor Academy podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, this is interesting because this is my previous life crossing over with my new life, essentially. This is we met while I was still doing reality television. So
Yes, a very long time ago.
man, I stopped 6 years ago, but I want to say we probably met like 9-10 years ago is when
This was man, this was like 2010.
yeah, maybe, yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. I want to
Yeah.
say
We were doing a MTV3, not MTV2, MTV3 television show that was it was a car racing show, right?
yeah. I would just say it was bad.
MTV Burnout, which is like
Yeah.
actually a really ironic name for what we're talking about because we're talking about burnout.
Yes.
Mental burnout, though.
Yeah. So why don't you introduce yourself, say, who you are, what you do, how you got there, and we'll work our way into this burnout thing that seems to plague guys in their late 30s and early 40s, apparently, from where I'm at in my life and what I realize is going on around me.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm Zach Storer. I am a camera operator and director of photography. I shoot TV shows, movies, commercials, scripted TV, reality TV, you name it, all of it.
Okay. And well,
been doing that.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I was saying I've been doing that about 11 years now.
Okay. And I know you took a path. You went to you went where, Full Sail down in Florida, right? For profit
Right.
film and video school.
Extremely for profit. But yeah, I did that when I was 20, and I was done by about 22.
Okay.
Or right around 22, and that's when that's kind of when we met, like right when I had finished that. Go ahead.
And so I mean, and then working into it, you've got essentially, I think a lot of people think sometimes you just kind of work on these TV shows and you just like you get a job and you have a job and they'll just kind of like a company will move you from one thing to the other, but in reality, you are an independent contractor like myself and a business owner, even though we could get into the legalities of how they pay and want a 1099 you when you should be an employee and all of that fun stuff. But essentially,
Right.
you have to find all your own work. You need to make connections and find somebody to take you from show to show. And so there's a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that your schedule stays busy.
Right. I mean, yeah, you are essentially freelance in a lot, and that is kind of the same as like running your own business in a sense, where it's just like yeah, it's up to you to find the work. Um, and yeah, you basically when one show, and I mean, no TV show or movie shoots forever, so when one ends, it's up to you to find the next one and the next one and the next one. So, I mean, you and I both know that like, when you're a camera operator, like 10% of your job is camera operation,
Hmm.
and the rest of it is finding jobs or traveling or whatever. It's a very small portion
Yeah.
of what you do.
Yeah, it's the same thing with flooring installation now, right? Like that's the last thing I do. I've got to sell a project. I've got to, market it. I've got to advertise. I need to pick up supplies and materials. There's 100 other things that I have to do before I actually go and install the floor. And there's 100 other things that has to happen before you actually shoot the TV show, let alone, you know, you're doing just as much. And so the the stress levels, the amount of work involved that people don't see, especially in I've realized that the trades are disrespected because they are pretty much creative ventures, just like reality television, right? When you film stuff or you're a
Absolutely.
photographer, everyone's like, "Well, I'll let everybody know. Like, I'll give you credit, right? Credit and copy is what
Yeah.
everyone offers in that field. I'll give you, oh, and we might feed you credit, copy, and some food. Well, yeah,
Yeah. Some cheap food.
I'm bringing $10,000 worth of equipment, so I'm gonna need you to pay me something. Like, it just doesn't work
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. My time costs money. My equipment costs money, and all of that.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. You
So
know.
I do, and it was amazing to see another field be affected by it. Except it's the same things kind of happen in this field where people are like, "Oh yeah, I'll do it." Like general contractors will always try and promise you more work, right? Like, give me this one real cheap, and I'll give you the next three houses. No, you won't.
Right.
No, you just
Yeah.
you won't. So, same things happen, same tricks. It's kind of interesting to see how worlds can overlap and business practices are the same kind of no matter where you go. But
Yeah.
you I mean, what was life like? Like what led to you? So essentially what happened is we're Facebook friends. We've stayed in touch, but not great touch. And I saw this random post from you about you had received a certificate from like a mental rehabilitation center, or like, what do you want to call it? What is it?
Yeah, it's a place called Fountain Hills Recovery, and they do like mental health, and they also do like addiction
Okay.
recovery. So they have a couple things where you can do like outpatient, and then they have like a program for like inpatient. And you
Hmm.
can go like if you're like say you're detoxing from drugs or alcohol, you can go into this program, and then you live inpatient for as long as you need. But in my case, I went for mental health inpatient. So basically, I check myself into like a 30-day inpatient program where you do like like 8 hours of therapy a day pretty
Hmm.
much, and it's like group therapy. It's group therapy, it's solo therapy. You see a psychiatrist once a week. You do various types of therapy, art, yoga, blah blah blah, like all that stuff. And you basically hit that hard. I mean, and they do it. You hit that hard every day, and it's just like you do that. You could do it 30 days, 60 days, 90 days.
Hmm.
Whatever it is that you feel you need while you're there. So I ended up checking myself in to a 30-day program, which I completed, and yeah, it was. I mean, it was something I like never knew I needed so bad until I had actually gone or got to the point of needing to go.
Hmm.
Uh,
Well,
and
so how did it get there, right? Like, what were these steps over like this 10-year career in reality television, or in like the film industry that led to even realizing like, man, something's really not right. Like, I need to find a fix.
Well, I mean, I think, when you start it, you're not really even considering your mental health. It's more so you are like you're in a mode of like, I have to work, I have to make money, I have to work, I have to make money, and you kind of just see that as like, oh, that's the right thing to do, especially when you have a family, like you and
Mm-hmm.
I do, or
Mm-hmm.
so it's like you're not really thinking anything other than that, and but you quickly realize when you're working in, and especially in our field or even like your field, it's like how much I didn't know going in how much time and how much of your life it it consumes essentially, because it's like, I mean, in my field, it's 12-hour days if
Yep.
you're lucky. um a lot of times it's 6 days a week, and a large majority of the time it's traveling on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Which when you're young, that's cool because you're like, oh, I get to see the world and I get paid and blah blah blah. It's like, but I think it's a novelty that wears off rather quickly, um, especially when you have a family or a wife, and then when kids get put into the picture. And I know you've had, your son was, you had your son even when we met,
Yeah.
so it was like you had been going through that the whole time. I didn't go through that until I was like 27, and I started this job when I was 21. And and it's just like, you when you're in the mix of it, you could be traveling, anywhere between like 7 and 10 months of the year if you're busy,
Mm-hmm.
if you're very busy.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, and that's rough when you're just married, but once, like I said, once you have kids in the picture, it just becomes like brutal, and it's just hard. It's you get into a career that you think is like really interesting and really cool, and then you quickly realize like, oh, this is a job for sure, and it's just got its downfalls. I mean, there's some, like we said, a very small portion of your job is doing your job, and the rest of it's dealing with, you traveling nonstop. You're in airports a couple times a week, and
Mm-hmm.
you have 30, 40 cases of gear that you're getting through airports, and it's only like six of you on doing it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, sometimes you're in crazy parts of the world. You're in like other countries, like third world countries, where it's just like, or you're in maybe a dangerous country, or you're in some part of the state where it's, everybody's quite different from where you are, or it's just, you're sort of always outside of your comfort zone. You're always working super hard. And then, I mean, not to like disparage people, like, or be very generalized, but like a lot of times in this industry, you work with a lot of kind of toxic and nasty people. Um,
Yes.
so you're basically, and when you're on the road with them, you work with them 5, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, which is plenty. And then on your days off, you have one of two choices. You can sit in a hotel room in a strange place by yourself until it's time to work again, or basically you spend all your time alone, or you can try and be around these people, or,
Mm-hmm.
and occasionally you're on the road with somebody really cool, somebody you can kind of lean on, but a lot of the times that's not the case, and you're just with a bunch of people that you're like, you call them like work friends, where they're more, you're like forced friends, because you're with them all the time. You're with them more than your family. You talk to them more than your family and friends, and
Mm-hmm.
and it's you can only deal. I think you can only deal with that for so long. And I
Well,
think, I mean,
well, it's like
years and
a
years and years.
yeah, it's like a party too, all the time, because you have nothing better to do than go to the hotel bar after a 12-hour shoot day or 14-hour shoot day, whatever it's going
Right,
to be that day. Like you said,
right.
it is 12-hour minimum days. That's just how production shoots are done. It is generally 6 days a week. And so yeah, you stop shooting at you'll go from 9 to 9 or 10 to 10 or whatever it's going to be
Hmm.
that day. You get done and everyone goes back and cleans up, and then everyone's at the bar. And so, like, how much more toxic is it going to get when
Right.
you're working long days? And not that they're always hard and stressful. Like, a lot of times you might sit in the van for 6 hours out of the day. It's
Yeah.
just
It
waiting to
varies.
shoot something. But there's
Yeah.
days you might go 12 hours real hard. But then you add in these other addictions that can exist, and just drinking alcohol in excess is going to take a toll
Yeah.
on you over time as well. And then I
Yeah.
can remember trying to, FaceTime with my son and my wife, and then have to go and, you got to hang out with the crew. Like you said, you can sit in your room and be a loner, or you can hang out with these other people. But if you don't hang out with them, you're not building the relationships and networking to be able to, like, get that next project.
Right.
So,
The name of the game is being likable and making people want to work with you. So it's just like if you are a recluse and all that stuff, then it's like it's not really going to serve you very well because, like, yeah, another big part of the job is kind of schmoozing.
mhm.
And it's like, I've never really been a drinker, and so I don't particularly enjoy doing that, and it's kind of hard, and there's a lot of people out there in the industry that have major alcohol problems or major drug problems or
Mhm.
major mental health problems, and it's like none of it's treated, and everybody's sort of like collectively in denial, like, yeah, this isn't a problem, this is just how it is, this is what this industry's like, and it's kind of accepted and encouraged and stuff.
Yeah.
um yeah, and then you meet some good, and don't get me wrong, you do meet some good people and stuff like that, but you meet a lot of really nasty people too, that just don't have anyone but their own best interests in mind.
Mhm.
And no matter how nice you are to them, they're gonna try and they throw you under the bus if they'd sell their own grandmother down the river if they
Yeah.
thought it would benefit them in some way.
Yeah. I
Um,
think you're gonna find that anywhere, but
well, yeah,
it's
I just feel
interesting.
like this job.
Go ahead.
I just feel like this job attracts that kind of very specific kind of person. Like you said, I've just seen that so
Hmm.
much.
No, I definitely, the reality television world takes a in my opinion, from having worked in it, this is not like I want to state, this is my opinion. Um, there's a lot of gray area. There's not black and white, like, hard morals. There's a lot of
No,
manipulation. There's just, well, we just need to make this work, so we're gonna, like,
right,
ignore the fact that it's kind of wrong and do it anyways. And it's
right,
that in and of itself, when you are somebody that wants to, like, live by a certain set of values, becomes really
right.
hard to be around.
Well, yeah, and it's like as like in our part of the career, like camera operating or director of photography or whatever it is that you're doing, like as far as like shooting the show itself, it's like you're not really you're not really making the decisions as far as like what kind of content you're shooting. You're just sort of there to shoot it. um and really it's, I mean, and this isn't true 100% of the time, but a large majority of the time, the manipulators and the people that aren't to be trusted are the producers,
Hmm.
and it's there's a lot of nasty people doing that job. Um, and it's not all the time, but it's especially in reality TV. That's a really I think common thing, and it's like yeah, like you said, you'll be shooting something, and it's just like you can tell that like maybe the people you're filming aren't the most mentally sound, or whatever it may be, and there you can see from your point of view that these people are being manipulated, or these people are being like almost tricked into doing things that they would never do or don't want to do, and then not only are they doing it, but they're doing it on camera.
Hmm.
and then they have the ability to edit it in any way they want to make you look. It's kind of up to them. And
Yeah.
as far as anybody that watches reality TV knows, like, you watch reality TV and it's like, they're going for the drama. They're going for the insanity, because that's what makes good TV. And a lot of these producers will do whatever it takes to make that shit happen.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, where, like, obviously you're kind of, it's a toxic environment to be in, and that's not going to help. And then it's stressful to find the next project. It's stressful traveling all over and dealing with everything. Like, what started adding up to where you were like, okay, like, something's really not right with me?
I mean, I would say all of it, because I think even before I started doing this, I was a very anxious even as a child. I was very anxious. I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder pretty young. And then it wasn't until like later in my mid 20s where they were like, yeah, it's very possible this is also bipolar 2, and stuff like that. So as far as like already having sort of that predisposition to stress, anxiety, depression, stuff like that, and then winding up in a field like that, because like when you're younger you think, oh, like this would be really cool to shoot movies and TV, and you don't really have any sort of there's nothing to sort of warn you what it's really like when you're getting into it, and it's kind of too late once you're in it and stuff. You're like, whoa, this is a lot different. And I think that happens in a lot of careers. But it definitely happened in television. And I'm sure it probably happened for you too.
Well, yeah, I think with flooring, right? I started that when I was early 30s. So I'd already done something I'd already mucked up multiple careers. I'm not going to lie here.
Right.
Like I'd made many mistakes.
Well, I just mean in the, like the sense of like when you got into TV, it was probably a little different than, it was a different beast than you sort of anticipated. There was a lot more to it than you anticipated.
Yes. I mean, I learned more in 3 months in the field than I did in 3 years of school, but there was definitely plenty to learn about how to play the game and succeed. Once again, I was a little bit older when I started that. I wasn't young 20s, fresh out of high school or anything like that, fresh out of college, but I had better tools at 32 than I did at 25 or so, or 24, 25. And so now, I think that's kind of what you're saying is we start these careers when you're young, and you may end up in a place that you just don't have the tools to deal with the issues that are being thrown at you to stay healthy and recognize that, hey, I need to take a break, or it's okay to take a week off here and there in between shows and actually enjoy myself.
Right. And it's like when you're young and you think like, oh, this, this is what I have to do. I have to be, yeah. And it sort of molds you in a way, like when you start really young with it, and it's just like you sort of just tell yourself like, well, this is just how it is. And you don't really think like how messed up a lot of it is. And, well, I think that happens. I don't feel like that happened to me so much. I feel like as I started to realize what things were actually like, I was like, oh, this is messed up. Whereas I feel like a lot of people get really caught up in it.
Yeah.
And they just sort of accept like, this is just how it is. And it's like, if I have to drink to keep, hang with these people, or if I have to do drugs, or I have to do these immoral things, both on set and outside of work, and then so be it. And that's what I'll do. Yeah. And I think just dealing with all, like I said, like being sort of like kind of naturally anxious person, and then getting into this, it just sort of exacerbated the problem. And it was like, I sort of held on to it as long as I could, which was a long time. I feel like 11 years of doing it was like more than my fair share. And there were times where I was fine, and there were times where I would just crash, and I felt horrible and depressed and all the stuff. But I would just tell myself, especially after I had a family, like, this is the right thing to do. I have to take every job that comes my way, no matter how miserable it is, so that I can pay the bills. And um, and I lived in LA for 10 years, and it's like I owned a house there, and that's not a cheap venture.
I don't know how you did that, dude. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, I know you
Yeah,
make good money as a camera operator. I have no idea how you bought a house so young in LA.
nonstop work. That's how I did it. Just like
Oh,
like we just mentioned, it was just like every single job, no matter how terrible or whatever it was, you just take it, you do it, and you just squirrel the money away,
well,
essentially, which is like, a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people in the industry just blow their money, like
yes.
drinking and just spending it foolishly, which I never did. But it was just like, at what cost was this money coming in at? Like,
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I know a lot of contractors that can, they can get a $20,000 deposit check and then they're rolling up in a brand new F-350 dually the next day. But then
yeah,
they
and you're
can't
like,
pay their guys on Friday because they
right,
spent all the money, so now they got to go find another job to get a deposit check for to meet payroll on Friday. Like, you got to be able to manage your money. And I did see that in the film world too. There's plenty of people making really, really good money, but there's also, just like business owners, get into tax problems because all of these independent contractors that are business owners get these 1099s and they're making six figures a year. I knew lots
right,
of people with that owed the IRS money and everyone was ignoring it, right? They're just waiting to get
right.
like the lawsuit and have them really, really come after you. So,
Yeah, it's just like a lot of people are really foolish with money, and they don't, and a lot of people, I think, start making more money than they expected, especially in this industry, and they don't know how to have money.
mhm.
And you have to learn. I think you have to learn to have money in a sense. And it's just like, like, especially if you're doing 1099s, it's just like that. You gotta keep some of that money, because it's like you're gonna end up paying own taxes and blah blah, like all that stuff. And it's so yeah, it's like you do have the opportunity to make a lot of money. It's just about how you manage it and stuff, and which I did a pretty good job of. But it just got to the point where it was like, we're making this money, we're saving money, we bought a house, we paid off student debt and blah blah
Mhm.
blah and all that. But it was just like, at a certain point, it started to creep into my head, like, how much, how much can I deal with, as far as mentally, to get, like, is it worth making all this money to be like this miserable all the time?
Well, yeah, and that was one of my realizations. There was a couple things going on in my life that really ended the reality thing, but at one point it was, I'm spending all my time making the money, but I've got a wife and two kids at home that spend it all without me, and
Right.
I don't see them.
Yeah, you're gone all the time, and it's just like your extent of spending money is, paying the bills online, and buying yourself food at the end of the day, or whatever it is. You're
Hmm.
basically paying bills, and just like, sending the money away, so that everybody at home that needs to be taken care of is being taken care of. And it's like you're not really reaping any of the benefits of making the money, other than it's just like, make money, pay bills, make money, pay bills.
And did your
Um,
did your wife stop working once you had your
um,
son?
she worked a couple, like, office jobs in TV, which she did not like. And then she really enjoys working with animals, so she was working at, like, vet offices, or like animal rescues and stuff like that. So she was doing mostly things she enjoyed, because she was kind of able to, and didn't need to have, like, a job to, like, maintain our bills and stuff like
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
Because luckily I was able to do that. And yeah, and then once we had our son, when she was, just about 26 and I was 27, yeah, it basically, we kind of agreed, like, oh, we don't want to have to have a kid, like, because a lot of people on TV, they'll have kids and they'll just, they'll immediately go back into working in TV, and then their kids basically, like, spend most of their time at a daycare or a babysitter or,
Hmm.
whatever it is. So we kind of decided, like, yeah, I feel like it's beneficial for him to have at least one of us home as much as possible.
Yeah.
Um,
I met
and it
a
definitely,
there was a producer, um, director of photography couple, like married couple, and they
yeah.
brought their child with them because it was younger, but they bought an extra hotel room everywhere they traveled to,
Uh,
and traveled the nanny with them.
yeah. And
It's like it's insane.
if you have
But
that luxury, that's kind of cool, but also it's like, that's a hectic thing to teach a child. There's no consistency, and I feel like children need consistency.
I 100% agree. I think it was an absolute horrible way to be going
Yeah,
around
and it
and
was,
raising a kid. But
yeah, it's just like, and then it's like you do meet a lot of people that both the parents work in the industry, and it's just like, why would you have a child, or why would you buy a dog, or why would you do any of that? Because it's just like, that you travel nonstop, you work 12 hours a day. A lot
mhm.
of the times you're not on the same job, because it's not, you're not going to be on the same job all the damn time.
Well, and the
And
divorce rate's so high too. How many people did
yeah,
you know that were on their third marriage in like 10 years?
oh my gosh, so many people. It was yeah, or people that were divorced and bitter, and
Hmm.
like a lot of older dudes paying a lot of child support and spousal support to multiple people at once, and you're just like, wow, you've really dug yourself a hole here.
Well, and that's why they got to keep doing the grind, right? They got to work 6 days a
Yeah,
week, 12 hours a day.
yeah, they hate the
52
job.
weeks a
They
year.
hate their they hate their exes. They are. It's just like, they're just kind of nasty people to be around. Yeah, nothing nice comes out of their mouths, and
So
like people like,
yeah, go ahead.
no, yeah, it's just something I wanted to avoid being. I
Hmm.
saw those kinds of people, and I was like, that I want nothing to do with that.
So where was your wife in this? Like as you were progressing, as you were making things, I'm assuming you guys were having conversations, or is it something that she brought to your attention and she was like, Zach, hey, like something's off with you or something's like wrong and
Well, yeah, I mean, she's always been really good at kind of identifying when I'm feeling off. A lot of times, even before I would start to realize it, which is kind of strange. But I mean, for a long time, she sort of understood. Like, we live in LA. It's really expensive, and we have all this stuff, and it's just like, she, it would just be like, we both kind of agreed, like, this is something you have to do,
hmm.
especially since it's your career and stuff. And but like, you'll think you have 3 weeks off, and you'll be sitting on the couch, and all of a sudden you get a phone call, and they're like, hey, can you go here tomorrow
Yeah, I
for
can.
2 weeks? And you're like, yeah, I'll do it, because you're just like, that's money, and I want to make money, and that's what I have, and you feel like that's the right thing
But
to
you didn't know
do.
when the next call was going to come. The problem is that you would take that job and then
Yeah,
somebody else would call that needed you 3 days later for a 6 week gig, and
right.
then you're punching yourself in the face.
Well, you psych yourself up thinking like, oh, you don't have a job, and you're like freaking out thinking like, oh, when will I work again? Well, when will I be making money again? And it's just like, a job calls you, and you're like, yes, I'll take it, because it's
Hmm.
just like, yeah, because you're so freaked out about, like, when the next job's going to come, when you're going to have more income. So it's just like, and the end of the year is always slow around Christmas. So when things are rolling in, you're like, I got to take it, because the end of the year is going to be slow, or this or that, or
Hmm.
there's
Hmm.
various reasons. So it's just like, you sort of just burn yourself out, out of necessity, because you feel like it's like, that's the right thing to do, especially when you're like the provider.
Yeah.
um you just don't feel like there's anything wrong with it, and you kind of put your own well-being on the back burner, uh for the greater good, repeatedly. But in that process, you miss, like, you miss, especially when you have a family, you miss things, like, you can miss a birthday, or if somebody's sick, you're not there to like help take care of them, or what, a lot of, normal life happens, and you miss a lot of
Hmm.
stuff, because you've basically prioritized, like, this career that's basically the controlling aspect of not just your life, but like everyone involved with you. Um,
Yeah.
and I did that for a long time, for just over a decade. And one thing that really helped is my wife had just been really wanting to leave LA because we had no family there. So when I would travel, I would sometimes I would get jobs that were like weeks and weeks, like I took one that was 10 weeks. And it was just like when that happens, it's just like it was just her and my son at home, by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like for that long, like no family, nothing. It was just her and him. And like I couldn't even fathom doing something like that. So um, I she got me kind of reluctantly to agree, like, yeah, let's move back to Arizona because we're both from here, and both of our families are from here.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of felt like, oh, I've been holding these two hostage in this city that they don't want to live in for this long, just so I can work and blah blah blah. And so we eventually, like last October, we moved back here, which it did help a lot because and I was sort of worried. I was like, oh, is my work going to slow down because I'm moving out of Los Angeles? But that was not the case. When I moved here, it in a way, it ramped up even crazier, and it was just more travel because, when you don't live in a major market, everything is travel.
Yeah.
So it sort of made the problem worse in a sense, where it was just like, okay, now I'm traveling primarily. Like there's not a lot of work in Arizona. It's
No, there's not.
um so yeah, I mean, it was just, how crazy it can get.
Well, okay, so you've moved, you've been doing it for a long time. You're like 9 years in at that point that you've come back to Arizona or so, and so she's gotten you to get her into a place where she's good with your son, and there's family around, and they can go and do things when you're gone, and you're still able to provide. So what was like the last tipping points to really make you be like, something's wrong, I need to go do, I need to fix myself. Like I'm just, I know I'm broken. I have to figure out what's wrong.
Well, it was something that like I I had fallen in like kind of dark holes before, as far as like my depression, anxiety, and all that stuff had gone. Like a lot of a lot of like, not so many high ups, but a lot of really low downs, and just sort of just push through it and push through it and sort of shove it down and ignore it and ignore it and ignore it. Keep working. And at that, I mean, for a long time, it had been affecting my marriage. It had been affecting my relationship with my family. It had been, affecting my relationship with my son because I was gone so much. And it was just like all that stuff had been compounding and compounding. And it was just like, feeling horrible over and over and over. And then eventually it just sort of, within like the last couple of months, it like the couple months leading into me going to recovery, I felt like the bottom had absolutely fallen out. Like it was just like, I was just kind of a nightmare person. It was like and I'm not the kind of person that when I'm depressed acts out or does things like that. I just kind of retract into myself, and isolate myself, and I completely cut off communication, and I don't tell anybody what's wrong with me, and I don't I don't go to like trusted friends with my issues, or my wife or my family or anything. I just sort of try and deal with it alone, um, which is not a good thing to do. Um, but I did that to an extent for many years, and then near like leading into going into recovery, it had just gotten like tenfold worse. And yeah, the bottom had just absolutely fallen through. It was just like the lowest depression I'd ever felt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to where it was just like I was so burned out mentally and physically, and just yeah, I had felt miserable for a long time, but this was just something different. It was just like it was like beyond miserable. Um,
Suicidal thoughts. Where,
it
like,
wasn't
what?
so much like suicide.
Go ahead.
I had a lot of like with anxiety and stuff. I had a lot of intrusive thoughts over the years where it was just like I had these thoughts that were like negative thoughts, but I always sort of recognized them as irrational.
Mm-hmm.
Um, whether not so much like, oh, I'm like planning to kill yourself or anything like that, but it was like, you think like hopeless things like, oh, I mean, maybe I'd be better off dead, or maybe this or that, or it's like all of these, everything negative you could possibly think, it kind of comes into your head, and it's just one of those things that you just carry around 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like even in your sleep, you're miserable at a certain point. And it was just, and I was just an unpleasant person to be around. So like all the time, whether it was at work or at home, I was just kind of like, you just didn't really want to be around me, because
Mm-hmm.
I was either angry or depressed, or it was just, yeah, I was just kind of the toxic person.
Okay.
And my wife had been wanting to do like, marriage counseling or like therapy, or like wanting me to go to solo therapy, and or get into some sort of program for like many years. And for me, it was like it was kind of a denial of the problem or avoidance of the problem, because it was just like I can't stop working for any reason whatsoever. And yeah, and just in the last few months leading into going into recovery, it's just like the sort of the pain and misery of it had just become beyond overwhelming, like to where it was like, you have a certain fear that is associated with getting like drastic help. And it was just like, once the pain and misery of getting the help wasn't nearly as bad as the pain and misery of like how you were feeling, and
Mm.
I think that's what it took for me to be like, okay, this is not sustainable, and something very bad is going to happen.
Okay.
Either, the marriage is going to end, or you're going to end up doing something horrible to yourself if you don't take action,
Mm-hmm.
like right here, right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think that's what, I mean, just a, it was just a compounding of like, 10 years of this stuff. And it all kind of just, the bottom fell through. Um, and that was about end of April, early May for me this year.
Okay.
And I just sort of I completely retracted into myself, like 150%. And it was just, I was just trying to deal with all this, alone basically. And, yeah, I mean, it just led me into, I mean, at a certain point, I was just like, I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know if I should check myself into like a, like a mental hospital, which didn't sound pleasant based on like what I had heard about it. Um, it sounded pretty crazy, and really, really unpleasant. So
Mm-hmm.
I sort of started researching, like, this was like a Saturday, and I found this place in Fountain Hills, like sort of in the Phoenix area. And it looked really nice and all of that. It was like the nicest one I could find. It seemed like a program that was great for me. And I called them on, Saturday night, or I sent an email Saturday night, and by Monday at noon, I was there.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it was just like, I just knew I had to do something like immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So, like this place, they take insurance, but they didn't take my insurance, and it's like a really kind of high end place. And I was just like, screw it, I'll pay cash. I'll do whatever it takes. I'm going to do this for 30 days. It was just like, as somebody that was like so stressed and cognizant about money, it was like, for the first time, I was like, doesn't matter. Just whatever it costs,
Mm-hmm.
whatever I have to do,
Mm-hmm.
I'll spend it. And, it's like an emergency at this point. Like it had never felt like such an emergency. to me.
Well, and at some point, I mean, you took 10 years taking care of other people and kind of putting yourself last.
Yeah,
And
absolutely
at some
no.
point, you kind of realize I have to take care of myself. And if I don't take care of myself, I'm not going to be able to take care of anyone else.
Right. It had just become apparent to me I was like completely sort of worthless to everybody else. Not even just worthless. I was like, I was worse than that because it was like, you know, your problems completely control you, but at a certain point, especially when you have a family, it completely controls every aspect of their lives too,
Mm-hmm.
because now they're so worried about you, and they feel helpless. They don't know what to do to help you. Um, and my wife had been dealing with this for so long, and it was just like, when I'm as miserable as I am, like, she is like completely neglected by me, as far as like, like when you have a partner, they have emotional needs, they have mental needs, they have physical needs, they have everything. Like they need someone to talk to, they need, everything. And it's just like I was giving 0% of that for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um so it was just like, not only was I isolating myself, but I was making my wife feel isolated, and it had like completely destroyed her mental health too as a result. Like, um so yeah, it was just like be kind of just became clear to me, like, I'm not only am I ruining myself, but I'm ruining everybody that I sort of care about in the process. I'm taking them down with me at this point. um
Yeah.
and I just sort of realized, like, either I do something to work on myself, or this, the marriage is over. It could potentially be life or death. It could be, and like, all the career stuff, all the money stuff, all of that, it sort of just like, it just sort of just completely dissolved. And I was just like, okay, this is what I have to do right now to fix this. Or it's
Mm-hmm.
like, it was like the like the legitimate turning point. um
Okay.
and I think I just caught it right at the right time, because I think any longer it would have just gotten worse, like substantially worse, very quickly.
Yeah, I
um
mean, there's people that'll just you end up ignoring it, or it gets so bad that you don't think you can fix it, and then really bad things can happen. So it's
right.
what was so. I mean, you got checked in. What was the 30 days like? You kind of talked about it earlier, but let's kind of go through your 30 days there real quick, and kind of where you were at when you started versus where you're at 30 days later.
um well, yeah, in a weird way, like, because I was so miserable, I was like, oh, this is the cure, this is the cure. And then within, like, a day or so of being there, I was like, oh no, there is absolutely no cure for this. This is teaching you how to deal with this in a healthy way. It's never going to go, 100% your way. And there's no,
Mm-hmm.
it's like when they tell people that are addicts, like, there's no curing addiction. It's just, you have to learn to manage it. They're like, you're always going to be an addict. It's just, and I feel like it's the same with like mental health. There's certainly no cure for it, but there's a lot of things you can do to live a much healthier and happier life. And
Mm-hmm.
I was doing none of that. Um, so yeah, I went in, and the program, the first couple of days of it was, I mean, making the decision to go to a program like that is terrifying in itself. Um, Especially when you do inpatient, because you're like, okay, what is this going to be like? I'm going to be, I'm going to be sharing a room with people I don't know, people that are also potentially a lot more mentally ill than I am, or
Mm-hmm.
addicts that have had really hard lives, or people that have potentially been in prison, or whatever it is. So it was terrifying, in that sense. It was a hard decision to make, but I sort of like, I knew it was something I had to do. So I went in and, you do like, you do all the intake stuff, and they take your cell phone. They take, like, you don't have anything. You don't have
I was
it.
going to say you get cut off from the outside world, right? You're not allowed to contact
Oh,
anybody for the
100%.
30 days. Yeah.
You go in, they search all your, I mean, this was a really high end place. And even then, like, they gut your bags, and they take all your medications from you, because I was taking antidepressant and like a couple different medications. And, so they take all of that from you, because they administer it to you.
Mm-hmm.
You fill out an absurd amount of paperwork and questions and all that, and they take anything that you have, like electronic. They take your wallet, they take all your money, they take, if they took my passport, they took everything. They strip you. They basically take you, and they give you your clothes back, and like whatever books and stuff that you, and all your toiletries, and they're like, all right, this is all ours now for the time being, and you don't get any of it. And then like the first week, they put you what's called blackout, which you can't even make any phone calls or have visitors.
Okay.
So like for the first 7 days, you're just immersed in it, essentially. And I went into this house, and it was a big house. It was like a 10,000 square foot house, like in Fountain Hills, like on the side of a mountain. It was really,
Oh yeah, it's a
actually really,
beautiful area. It's gorgeous.
it's beautiful. The house is beautiful. But I walk into the house, and there's like, 8 other dudes there. And I walk in, and they're like kind of all looking at me, and like, oh, a new guy's here. And I go in, and I do my intake, and the guy walks me around the house and shows me, the house. The house is nice. It has a gym. It has a theater room. It has like 6 bedrooms. It has like an enormous pool, beautiful backyard, and like huge kitchen, like everything you could need, like like pool table, ping pong. Like it's a really cool place. It's beautiful. And they put me in the master bedroom, which has 4 beds in it, but there's only one other person staying in it at the time. And it was like this cranky older gentleman that snored a lot, named Harold. He was and him and I eventually ended up becoming really close. I killed him with kindness until he became my buddy. But yeah, it was scary, man. I showed up like halfway through the day, and one of my things was like, when I was feeling stressed, I would just be on my phone all damn day, like just like trying to avoid everything that was going on in my head. So they immediately took my phone. I had no computer, nothing, no way I couldn't call anybody. And it was just like, everything was gone. And then I was in this house surrounded by all these people who I didn't know. I didn't know what they would be like. And when you go into a place like that, like, you're like emotionally raw, because you're like, hey, you just made this hard decision to go there. You're leaving your family for 30 days. Like, at least when you're traveling, you have your phone, you can FaceTime. I had none of it. So it was just like the first couple days were brutal. But like, I walk in, and all the dudes are a little younger than me, but like they're immediately super nice. Like, all of them are super nice, and like, like go out of their way to like show you around the house and talk to you, and all of that stuff. And that helped a lot. And yeah. And then like, they do a lot of cool things and programs like that. Like, you do like a nightly review where they have like a set of questions, and everybody sits in a group, and you go around and answers the same question. And like, well, were you resentful? Were you afraid? And if you answer yes, you can explain it. And then everybody sort of gives you feedback, and everyone's really supportive. And it was really cool. And then like, the next day is when I started like the therapy, where you go to the group therapy. And it was like, there was a girl's house and a guy's house in the same neighborhood. And then we'd all go to a clinic, and that's where we'd be there for like 8 hours a day doing group therapy. You would do solo therapy. You would see a psychiatrist, like for your medications and stuff like that. But yeah, it was all kind of really intimidating, because you're put in these big groups with therapists, and just expected to like share really like personal things about yourself with a lot of people. And it was like, and it was at first it was really difficult, but within a few days you sort of got used to it. And like, everybody had their own shit, and a lot of people had a lot bigger problems than I did. which put a lot of things in perspective. But just everyone was so supportive, and it was cool because someone like me, or like someone that's like really anxious or depressed, like you, a big problem you have is like feeling understood by other people,
Yeah.
especially that don't feel the same way that you do. And like I was thrown into a place where there was like 30 people that like completely understood how I felt, and like completely kind of understood how my mind worked and all that stuff, and they were all super nice and supportive. So it was just like right away, it was just like, okay, this is there's something definitely to this. Um, and I saw a lot of people that would go into that place and they were like super resistant of the treatment, but I felt lucky in the sense where like I chose to go there and I knew there were problems. So I was
Okay.
like, I was willing to like completely sort of surrender myself to the process before I even showed up.
Well, and I think that's going to be a big step in making it worth your while, right? Like you chose
Right.
to go, and then you chose to actually actively participate the way you were supposed to. Like the system never works when you fight it all the way.
Well, it's like making a drug addict go to treatment against their will. It's like you can't. It doesn't work that way because unless they want to get better, they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, and then another interesting part you brought up, right? You talked about essentially your phone was a coping mechanism. And I
oh
think
yeah,
that's just society where we're at right now, is that you can pick up a device anytime you want. My wife yells at me all the time to get off the phone, right? Like we'll hop in
yeah,
the car, she's driving, the kids are in the back, and I'll just hop on my phone because she's got to drive and I need something to entertain myself with.
right.
Why have a conversation with her? She's right there. Like I got this. I'll find my own thing to do. And
Hmm.
it's not right. So
No,
I think that's it's not just you, it's the world in general right now, just because there's an
yeah,
easy escape to avoid having to talk about personal issues or go, and even though we need human contact and relate to people, like there's so many things available at our disposal to keep us within ourselves instead of putting our having to
right.
put ourselves out there.
It serves you or nobody else in any way because it's just like you especially like in a marriage, like if you're just like completely, or like have kids and you're completely ignoring them due to your phone, it's just like what good is that doing anybody? It's just like it's just further deteriorating any sort of forms of healthy communication you could have.
Mm-hmm.
um but yeah, not having the phone was brutal for about 5 days, and then once I sort of got over it and just sort of like got used to not having it, like I loved not having it. And by the end of the program, I was like dreading getting it back.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, it was just like not having it was super. It just felt super great. Like it was,
It's freeing, I'm sure.
yeah, it's just
uh,
like you don't have these. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think, look, the internet's a great thing. What technology has done for this world, the ways we're able to communicate it's great. But I don't think it's healthy. Like how fast information travels now, and how dependent upon technology we are. Like, man, there's a reason that, your body's made to get tired when the sun goes down, and you sleep and you wake up when the sun comes up, and you can read a book and entertain yourself and sit with somebody and have a conversation. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, they were simpler times, but I bet you the mental health on people was a lot better.
Oh yeah, I mean, social media in general, I don't think is serving anybody in any uh, in any like. I mean, I'm sure there are positive aspects to it, but it far out. I mean, the negative aspects far outweigh that.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it was just nice to not be having to deal with work emails or work texts or work phone calls or just anything, or have to talk to, because like when all your friends work in the industry, all they want to talk about is work.
Hmm.
Um, so it was just like that. All that was completely gone. It sucked not having contact with my family. But after a week, I was able to start making like one phone call a day, and then they
Okay.
were able to come visit on Saturdays for 2 hours. Um, but it was just, I mean, I was like kind of pissed about the phone at first, and then I was just like, it just was so clear that it was just like, yeah, you're there to work on yourself, and as long as you're distracted by stuff like that, there's no way you're gonna be able to do that.
Okay.
Um,
So I like where, you go through and you kind of talked, right? Like you do some therapy, you're sitting with the psychiatrist, you have group therapy, individual therapy. I think you mentioned like yoga in there, or maybe that
yeah,
was
we
the
do
other
like
day when we
equine
talked.
therapy, art
Okay.
therapy, um, music therapy, like you name it. And then because there were a lot of addicts in the program, we would like 4 nights a week, they would take us to like various meetings, and everybody had to go. So it would be like you go to HA or Narcotics Anonymous or Crystal Meth Anonymous, and you would sit in these meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And like a lot of that stuff is like a lot of the addictions are like mental health based to begin with. Um, so like I felt like I was learning things even at those types of meetings, even though I wasn't there for any sort of substance or
Mm-hmm.
addiction or anything. Um, I felt like I was taking things from every single thing we were doing, and I was just trying to absorb everything. And at the end of it, I I just I felt like more mental clarity than I've like really ever felt, because it was like I just learned so much and met so many really, really awesome people in there. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people that are addicts, a lot of people that are mentally ill and stuff like that. And it was just, yeah, it was incredible. It's really great.
Okay. So this will come out like down the road from when we're actually recording it. So you've been, let's see, you said you went in like early May. It's now early
Yeah.
July, so you've been out. You've been out like a little over a month, correct?
No, it's been a couple weeks. Yeah. Not quite a month, but yeah,
Okay.
it's been a couple weeks now. And yeah, so that's accurate.
So where is Zach at now? Right, like you had this sterile environment that you were put in, and you were taught
Right.
tools to learn how to better cope with life. And now you're back and you have to function within like the quote unquote real world of whatever's going on, but you have tools to handle
Well,
just your environment
it's
better.
well, you get really comfortable in a place like that, so it's a little nerve-wracking leaving. In a weird way, like you're really excited to go, but also you're sort of like you feel like a little bit of dread and anxiety, because it's like, okay, now it's like taking a baby home from the hospital after they're born. You're like, oh shit, this is on me now. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
You're like,
yeah.
it's up to me not to kill the baby. Uh, but yeah, so it in a way it was like, but they do a really good job of making sure that you have a solid place and plan before you leave the place. So for me, it was like it went from thinking like, oh, this will cure me, to okay, this is just a really, really strong foundation to stand on. And now it's time for me to continue what I've learned and continue the healing afterwards. So it was like, before I even left the place, what was cool is they would let us do family sessions. So my wife would come in once a week and sit with my therapist,
Okay.
and we'd sort of come up with a plan. So by the time I was leaving, we had booked like an intensive sort of marriage retreat, or like marriage sessions, where it's like 3 to 6 hour sessions, like for your marriage. And then my wife, because a lot of it was, I have a lot of blame in it, but like, her mental health had like deteriorated a lot. So we both sort of realized like, it's important for me to recover, but it's also just as important for her to recover.
Mm-hmm.
So she started seeing a solo therapist, which she found and started going to before I got out. And then before I left, I had found myself a new therapist to see by myself. And I had like, booked my first session with him. We had already, booked and paid for the intensive therapy. We're seeking like normal couples therapy as well. And then we're doing something called CODA, which is Codependence Anonymous, which are like meetings that you go to kind of like AA or
Mm-hmm.
NA, but it's for people that are like codependent, which is like a whole nother. I could talk about that for forever. But so we kind of had five really strong things in place,
Okay.
which we've been putting into action since I've been out of there, and it's just like the benefits from that have been like it's just they've been it's been like a complete awakening. And these were things my wife has been urging me to do for 5-6 years at this point. We need to have counseling. You need to go to a program, and I was just like, fuck that. I'm sorry,
No, you're
but
good.
I was just in complete denial, and it was really the person resisting it was me, and finally I was on board as she was, for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just like it's been night and day. I mean, obviously it's not you. Sometimes you're gonna take little steps backwards, especially in a marriage, because it's like nothing's perfect. Life's hard, so it's just a matter of how you deal with it and stuff. But like the intensive therapy, like the intensive marriage therapy, has been like it's just been like really so far like the breakthrough of all breakthroughs. Um,
I mean, you feel like you're in a new place. You guys are like communicating better. You feel like you have like an actual relationship again versus maybe
oh,
you just like lived
100%.
in the same house together.
Yeah, it was all mechanical at a certain point, and it was just like there was no communication, there was no healthy conflict resolution. It was just and the conflicts were becoming closer and closer together, like between us and stuff, and it was just going down a bad road. And now it's just like I learned all these tools in this program, and now we're learning all these tools together, and she's seeking therapy to work on her own issues, because we sort of realize like we have to work on ourselves separately before we can start making things better together.
Mm-hmm.
um and I mean, it's just, yeah, everything has been, it's just, some days we feel like we've made a lot of progress, some days feel like we've made none, some days we feel like we've made a tiny bit. But like it's one of those things, like we're both realizing, you take it one step at a time, and not try and take too many things on at once. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so far it's been working. It's just been like, it makes a hell of a difference when both people are fully on board and like committed to fixing stuff.
Well, I mean, if you're
Um,
if you're supposed to be partners, right? Then you both got to work on it. So it doesn't
yeah,
help
like
if
if
only
I
one
went,
person's doing the work.
yeah, yeah, if I went and got help, and she did nothing to help herself, then the benefit of my program would only last for so long before it just fell into the same it sort of just fell back into the same pattern. So
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, I feel like we're doing it like the correct way.
Has your
And
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Has your son made any comments? Has like since you've been
um
back, like has he said like I like new daddy, or like has he noticed a
yeah,
difference in like what's going on?
well, like when I was feeling depressed, I had like no motivation to do anything with him. It was just mostly like I was like so wrapped up in like how miserable I felt, that it was like he was like getting kind of like ripped off out of like like healthy interaction with me, and or his mom was depressed or stressed out, so he was not getting enough healthy interaction with her or stuff like that. And yeah, just like and he's 5, so he knew something was going up. He wasn't completely oblivious.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think he notices and feels the difference, and I think he he seemed a lot happier and stuff. One really weird thing that my therapist pointed out was like, now when me and my wife show like affection towards each other in front of him, he gets pissed and doesn't like it, because basically we have been so sort of separate for so long that that's kind of what he thinks a relationship looks like.
Mm.
And now that he sees us being more affectionate and like talking and stuff more, he gets pissed because he thinks if like my wife and I are becoming closer, that like what's going to happen to him? You know what I mean? Like he's going to like we're going to like cast him aside. So we're sort of like in this weird process of like trying to show him like, no, it's not just me and your mom. It's all three of us now.
Yeah.
It's not Blake and dad or Blake and mom. It's, Blake, mom, and dad.
That's deep.
It's the three of us, because he's been seen since he was, since he can start processing, like, oh, dad's over here, mom's over here. They're not super, yeah, they're not super affectionate. They don't communicate well and all that stuff. And now it's like, now that he sees it's going well, he at first he was like really pissed about it or like upset about it.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, now we're going through the process of showing him like, no, it's not me and mom and no Blake. It's all three of us. So it was something I never realized. And the therapist sort of pointed that out to us. And it was like, wow, like you don't realize like how strong the impact is on like a child
Mm-hmm.
in that sense.
They are way more observant than we ever give them
Oh my
credit
God.
for.
Oh, 1,000%. Like he knows what's going on. Yeah. And it's like, now we're trying to kind of have to show him like, no, this is how mommy and daddy should act towards each other.
Mm-hmm.
And just because we're acting that way doesn't mean that you're not involved or that, like stuff like that. So it's a lot of things are coming to the surface where it's like, okay, we've been doing this wrong for this amount of time. And now it's time to build new habits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's next, man? I know we chatted before we did this, right? And so TV doesn't look like it's on the horizon, but I mean, what are you kind of looking at, eyeballing? What are you trying to figure out?
I mean, the one thing we sort of spoke about that stood out to me was just like, when you do something like this for so long, it becomes like a part of your personality or like who you are. So like, it's like, and especially when you make a living doing it, it's really kind of a hard thing to let go of. It's almost like you're letting go of an addiction or something in a weird way, where it's like, you have to
part
like,
of your identity.
Yeah, it's who you are. And especially in like the TV industry, a lot of people wrap up their entire personality and identity into like what they do. And I feel like I sort of got caught up in that. So it's like, it's been a process for me to be like, okay, I think I'm comfortable with letting this go, or letting it go to like to an extent where it's like, I have all these boundaries and I'm not doing these jobs that are miserable to me, or I'm not doing jobs that require me to travel for X amount of time, or, just letting go of a giant part of like what has been your whole life for the last 11 years or whatever. But I'm starting to actually feel comfortable and like happy with the idea of like, maybe this is not what I'm doing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And, because I've been so good with money, I'm in like a unique position right now where it's like, I don't have to work, so I can take the time and say like, okay, I'm not going to work for quite a while. And I'm going to, maybe use this time to see if I can find something else that I want to do, and stuff like that, which is scary, but it's also like, in a way, it's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, I got into the film industry, which is like a really difficult industry to get into, as you know.
Yes.
And I found a lot of success in it. And I feel like if I could have done that, like, then I can probably find something new.
Look, man, you became a camera operator by living in Arizona. Okay. I did the same thing.
Yeah.
That ain't normal.
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
And it's a very competitive field to begin with. And it's just like trying to break into that. Like it's tremendously hard. So I look at it in a sense of like, oh, if I can do that, then I can certainly figure something else out to do in a health like that keeps me mentally healthy and keeps my family happy and keeps the bills paid. And like, there's other ways, but like when you're so wrapped up in it as your sort of your identity, you're just like, fuck, what am I going to do? What can I do? And you kind of have to just step back and be like, relax. You don't have to go back to it.
And that's where I was at 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Was I stopped getting calls because no one wanted to work with me because I was pessimistic and just
Miserable.
Well, yeah. There was lots of things going on, but
Oh,
when
yeah.
the phone stops ringing, I basically got to sit there and say, okay, what skills do I have,
Shit. What do I do?
and where can I apply them?
Right.
And that's how I landed on getting into flooring, because I knew I enjoyed woodworking in high school and middle school, and I was like, okay,
Yeah.
so let me take
That's
this
super
set of
impressive.
skills
Like
and
what
like
you
go
built.
here. So time will tell, but thank you.
I mean, you seem, yeah, you sound like compared to like the you I knew back then when we were both kind of in the thick of it, or, because there would be times where I would get job offers in Arizona and I'm like, I don't live there, but I know somebody that does.
Hmm.
And I would throw your name in the hat and you might get hired on something and you've done the same thing for me because that's
Yeah,
how it works. But it was
correct.
just like the yeah, the you I would talk to over the years, like intermittently, like this version of you seem a lot more upbeat and yeah, you seem kind of like you're a lot happier with what you're doing and you're a lot more optimistic where that's hard.
Yeah. No, I get it. There's a lot of life lessons learned. A lot of
Yeah.
I think what a lot of people miss is, like, I hated school. Like I hated going to film school, and I was doing something I wanted to do, and I still hated it because I hate being
Yes.
told how to learn, and I hated
Yes, that
learning.
sucks.
And when I finally
Yeah.
discovered that, like, learning is important,
Yeah.
that was a turning point. Like, once I realized, like, I had to learn, but I could choose what and how I learn,
Yeah.
then it was a little more exciting. And I think
Yeah.
more people need to look into self education, and you're probably at that kind of point
Oh,
too, where,
100%.
like, oh,
Yeah.
I didn't have tool sets, but I need to figure them out. And so you go and you start seeking these things out, and once you put the tool sets to work, you're like, oh, well, what other one can I
Yeah.
gain? Like, what's next?
Well, once you leave like the public school system where it's like they don't equip you at all to do any learning by yourself, you just learn what they tell you to learn. And as you get older, you realize like, oh, I can learn however I want, whatever I want. And it's 10 times more beneficial than sitting in a classroom and just learning to memorize things so you can pass a test.
Yes,
Yeah, it's like you learn how important it is to learn.
exactly.
Um, yeah, no, I completely agree with that.
All right.
But
Well, I could keep going with you, and I'm sure
yeah, we
we
could
will.
talk for like 4 hours.
Correct, and definitely, easily. If people want to reach out to you, if you don't mind, if you want to give info, you can. This is kind of like your time to plug things. I don't know how active your Instagram has been lately, but I do know that you are an avid photographer, just for like shits and giggles. So if you want to throw
Um,
that out there, if people are, you want people seeing what you're
I
taking pictures of, whatever you're doing, man.
so I got rid of my Instagram.
Okay.
It feels damn good. But yeah, I do have Facebook. You can reach me there. Just Zach Store, ZACHSTORER, or you can email me, which is ZachStore222@gmail.com. Spelled the same way as my Facebook. And I'm happy to talk to you, especially people that feel like they're going through the same thing or have questions about recovery or like a program like I went through, or whatever it is. Like I'm happy to talk about it because I mean, some people need that push to
Mm-hmm.
find help
Mm-hmm.
or make sense of things, and it's just like you anyone that doesn't feel understood, you probably are more understood by more people than you think. Uh, just a lot of people don't like to talk about it, but I will.
Thank you.
So
No, that's awesome.
yeah, man.
I think you're totally right. I think if people would actually share their feelings honestly, you'd get a lot. Like my simplest example is a lot of times people are like, "Hey, how you doing?" Right? The go-to answer is good, okay, like whatever.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Man,
Yeah.
if you're feeling down, dude, just say you're feeling down. Who cares? Like,
Yeah, you don't have to
it's
give everyone the fine details, but you can like, especially if it's somebody trusted or like a friend, you can tell them like, hey man, I'm feeling bad and this is what's going
dude, I don't
on.
even care if it's a stranger because the reaction on their
Yeah,
face shows you how against the grain in society it is, and I like
right,
seeing it because it makes people think. Like they don't expect
right.
that answer, and now they're like, "Oh, wait, okay."
Well,
So,
I posted what I posted on Facebook, and I've gotten dozens of messages from people saying like, yeah, I feel the same way, or I went to treatment for this and I never told anybody about it, or I had a friend message me yesterday saying like, I'm checking into treatment as we speak, and you absolutely led the way to this for me.
that's
And
awesome.
so it's like, yeah, it's like any, it's a lot of people need that, and it doesn't need to be embarrassing or anything. Yeah, it's real easy to talk about once you get used to it, and
Well,
there are a lot of people.
yeah, it's your post was amazing to me. Like I read it and I was blown away about how open and comfortable you were with it, which obviously prompted this whole thing. But
Right.
you're right. Like just throwing it out there gives other people hope or that push or whatever to get them
Right.
hey, look, there's something else. You don't have to be like this.
Yeah, I have friends that like, or people that I worked with that I didn't know even like sort of like knew I existed anymore because it had been so long since I'd worked with them, and they were just like, this is insanity. This is like awesome. And then they're opening up to me about stuff and like telling me like that, like they realize like, oh, somebody does understand how I've been feeling, or that you helped me realize I do need treatment, or whatever it is. And it's just like, that's great, because that's what you want. Yeah, because you can't get better until there's sort of an acceptance that there's a problem.
You got to be comfortable in your own skin.
Yes. And that should be more. There should be more of that.
Awesome, my friend.
Yeah, man.
I really, truly appreciate it. Thank you for opening up. Thank you for being
Absolutely
vulnerable. Excuse me. I will. I'm sure we will stay in touch. Especially, I know you're back. You're 45 minutes south of here or so. So
yeah, we don't live far away now.
No. So let's stay in touch. I'm sure we'll talk again soon. But thank you for doing this.
Absolutely, dude.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right, man. Bye.
That's all the time we have for this week. To keep the conversation going, head on over to the Floor Academy Facebook group. Be sure to subscribe so you can hear each and every episode. We can be found on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and most major podcast directories. Don't forget to leave a review and let us know what you think about the show. If you would like to be a guest, have questions or feedback, you can email us at flooracademypodcast@gmail.com. You can help support the show by becoming a patron over at www.patreon.com/flooracademy. Remember to learn well you earn.